is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Crash Course Metal Show. I'm your host, Trevor Crash Knight, and we got with us on this beautiful Monday, Chris Elliot from 86 Bullets. What's going on, my man?
Not much. What's happening with you?
Yeah, same old, same old. Well, what we're going to be doing is another all killer, no filler album here. So we each going to bring one to the table like we usually do. Chris, I am going to throw it to you first. Give us your album for this week.
Okay, so I picked Sepultura Chaos AD. This is a 1993 September release. It came on the heels of Arise, which was a really good album. Beneath the Remains before that, I believe, and that's a great thrash album. Chaos AD. This was a little bit of a departure from their thrash roots. Mm-hmm. They got some more slow, more like groove metal type of stuff in there. Not all of it. I mean, right. There's some really wicked fast stuff, but there's some slow stuff too, but it's very heavy. It's a somewhat of a transition, not as much as Roots was. And I didn't like that album when it came out.
Right. Yeah.
I'll have to re-listen to it. I know it got critically acclaimed, right, but I remember hearing it and I was like, this is just too much, drum percussion and weird stuff going on. I'm like, it's not heavy. And, I want to hear just heavy thrash, hard rock, just metal, and I think Chaos AD does that. And the other thing too, is I don't generally like a lot of stuff that sounds the same. So I like to have it break up a little bit. So I tend to gravitate toward albums that have diversity on them. And I think you get that with this record. It was produced by Andy Wallace, who's a pretty famous producer. He's done a lot of metal stuff through the years. I believe he also did Arise. So they brought him on to do Chaos AD as well. Okay. Just kind of going down the track list. Now, a little side note here. I have the original issue. The way I realized that, I didn't know that until I started looking into it, but there's a hidden track on my copy. It's track number 13. It's not listed, but it's just a bunch of them making noise and yelling and laughing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that was yours is the Roadrunner, correct? Is that Epic? It is Roadrunner?
This is the Epic Roadrunner edition.
Okay.
But it was apparently outtakes from track number 9, We Who Are Not As the Others. Because if you listen to that at the end, you hear that.
Yes.
But the track 13 is the unedited version where they're just making a bunch of noise and stuff like that. So anyway, so I think that was the first edition. I know it is because I got this literally in 1993 when it came out. I was so jazzed about Arise, and I thought it was such a good album. When this came out, I was like, great, the new Sepultura, I got to get that. Also, I saw them on this tour.
Okay, nice.
They opened for Pantera.
Not a bad bill there. Yeah, not a bad bill.
Can imagine that show, right?
Pretty
heavy.
The mosh pits. I could imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah, I remember we had seats, and they were pretty good. They were like right. They were close to the front, and we weren't in the mosh pit. That was like in front of us. But I remember when it was it was when Pantera went on. There was somebody that just flew over my head. I mean, it was crazy, like trying to get to the pit. I mean, it was the whole place kind of turned into a pit.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can believe it.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a pretty heavy show. But back to the album. I'll just kind of go down the track listing. Refuse Resist, just great heavy song. Territory too.
A trap in every ward. War for territory. War for territory.
One thing I just want to mention about Max's vocals, he comes off as convincingly as possible, sounding like he's vomiting blood, I guess, for the most part. He definitely either sounds like that or he's on the can or something. Him and the guy from Obituary were my top ones that I can think of that had that kind of sound, where
Right.
they were just, you know, had some physical issues going on, but it's really cool, man. His voice is just, I love it. I think Max has a great voice. It's just, he's just, it's emotional, I mean, but it's so heavy. Slave New World is heavy, Amen heavy. KOS or whatever that is called. It's like an interlude. I've almost left this album. That one and track 11, the cover called The Hunt. Those were to me a little bit, they weren't, top notch like the others as far as I'm concerned, but I don't think they let it down enough to, I mean, I wouldn't really skip them. I mean, I might skip KOS. That's like an acoustic thing, but I look at it more like an interlude. It kind of connects, you get a little break. It's an intermission in the album, which brings you to kind of the rest of it, which is just crushingly killer. Propaganda, Biotech is Godzilla. That has it was co-written by Jello Bafria from Dead Kennedys.
Oh,
I was
okay.
thinking. Yeah, and then I like the punky ones too. We've talked about it. It's not quite your avenue, but I do like. I mean, I like hardcore, so
Mhm.
that to me is fine. Nomad is cool. We who are not others. I mean, it's just on and on. It's just crushing and it's killer. Dahan is a little bit of a letdown. I don't know if I'd skip it. It's all right. Um, and Clench Fist ends with a really good track. And then, like I said, the bonus track, it's really a silent track. It's not listed, but it's just them making a bunch of noise. I really don't count that as part of the record. But yeah, overall, I think it's a great album. And it's got pretty cool artwork on it. It's kind of crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say I certainly
Apocalyptic and
enjoy
so
the
forth.
artwork. I do. It is a very entertaining and album cover, and it grabs you. I like it.
Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, after this album, I think they had one more, and then Max left the band, and it was
Right.
they went through some changes and so forth. I don't think they ever got back together with the original lineup. I know Max and Igor play in Cavalera
Right.
Conspiracy now, but as far as I know, the band never reformed with the four members, as far as I know, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely, I will say that I bought this album a couple years ago, and I couldn't really get into it then, and I prepped and listened to it like another 3 times or more than 3 times this past week's in preparation for this video, and I still really could I still kind of felt the same way. I don't know because I think you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit for me when you said about it kind of sounds more on the groove metal side because I never heard previous albums from Chaos AD, like their thrashers or their thrashy stuff. So I would be very willing to check those previous albums out to see what they sounded like, more so than say the groove metal Pantera type Sepultura sound. But obviously the singles you have here are really good. Refuse, Resist, Territory, Slave New World, good songs. But I think for me, they're like throughout listening to this album, I'm kind of like, it, to me, it kind of does sound the same a little bit. If I'm going to listen to like something like this, I'm going to turn or like with these kind of vocals at the same time and the music as well, the heaviness. I would prefer to go more on the side of Death, so somewhere around at that level. So the songwriting's fine. Nothing that blows me out of the water per se, but I understand why people like this. There is something here. I'm not gonna slight it or like say this is worthless because there is good tracks on here. But for me though, it's just not one that I would visit more than maybe a couple times every year, so to speak. And but I mean I agree because I also bought Roots at the Roots at the same time. And I definitely agree with you on that as well. It's definitely goes even more extreme to the grooviness, and then like you said, more percussions, definitely different atmosphere even from Chaos AD. So, but this album did go gold though in America, and that very for the time at 93. Yeah, that's a good, still a decent year for metal. And I did hit in the top 32 of the top US Billboard 200. So it certainly does have its fans. There's no doubt about that. It's certainly a fine album, commercial. I don't want to say like it didn't get like way mainstream or anything like that, but it has its fans, and it certainly has its certs as well. So but for me though, I kind of, it's just not an album that I just don't visit a whole lot. It's still kind of in the same spot as it was when I picked it up a couple years ago, and it's just. But I like bringing this variety there to the show because I enjoyed picking it back up though again and listening to it this past week. But like I said, for me, it just kind of, I'll just go in more of the terms of like Death and bands like that than going to the groove metal type deal. But I would be very interested in checking out Sepultura's previous albums, catching their more thrashy stuff. So, but
Yeah,
that's kind of like what I thought of Chaos AD there.
I think you would be more of a Beneath the Remains kind of guy. I think that's a good place to start. I mean, it's thrashy and heavy and, not even super well produced. It's got that real
Right.
underground sound to it. Yeah, one little side note too, they apparently didn't get a lot of push on this album either from the record after that. And I think they got dropped or something. It's weird. But
Well, yeah,
yeah.
because what Roots came out 3 years after this. So
Mhm.
well, it does look like it's still on Roadrunner. Roots is still
Well, it
on
might have
Roadrunner.
been the Epic. Does it say Epic on there as well? Is it
I do not see. I don't see Epic. All I see is
I
Roadrunner.
think I think what it was Epic was there for the distribution and then they just didn't push them. They
Okay.
put all their backing into Prong and who was it? There was another band that, they apparently just didn't put a lot of effort into the Sepultura, into the KSAD, but so that might have been it. I think it was Epic that dropped out, but they were still with Roadrunner.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That makes sense then. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean that's still a good pick. All right, Chris. If you have anything else to say about Sepultura, I will unleash my pick for this week.
No, let's hear yours.
All right. So this week, this one goes back in time for me. 1988's Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 from Halloween.
Sometimes we need to be
And obviously, part 1 here behind me on the shelf. Also, an amazing album. I was in between which one I wanted to do. But for me, part 2 always had a special place in my heart. Like when I was young, I think part 2 I did buy first. And so that might be a reason why. But for me, this is where power metal started. This is where it all began on that side of things. And from Germany, and we talk about it a good amount too. A lot of good metal bands come out of Germany of the like power metal, thrash metal, all that kind of different stuff. Like Creator, very good, very good. I enjoy the German metal a lot, and Halloween here certainly brings a different side of the metal as well. You could even argue that obviously they are one of the pioneers of power metal, but man, just for like 80, well, this is 88, this album. They did want to put part one and part two as a double album, as one whole album. And the record company was like, we're not going to do that. You're releasing them as two albums. So in 87, they did part one, and then part two released in 88. So, but yes, I always enjoyed this album. Very good. Obviously, Michael Kiske, the vocalist, very good singer, gets all those high notes. And I just love the songwriting too. It takes you on an adventure. It especially with the epic song, the ninth track, title track, Keeper of the Seven Keys. I love that song. 13-minute song. That's like one of the best epic songs that, my favorite one, and I would even say probably one of the most loved epic songs there ever was, especially on the metal side.
And earth swallowing him away. You're the keeper of the seven keys. You locked up the seven seas.
So yeah, you start out with that opening song, or intro, invitation, and then you got Eagle Fly Free comes in after a minute. You Always Walk Alone, Rise and Fall, Dr. Steen. Like, there's fun songs on here. Like Dr. Steen's a fun song about some like Frankenstein guy creating a monster and killing it. It's just kind of like a tongue-in-cheek song, real fun, lightens the mood a little bit. But then you get serious right after that. We Got the Right, a slower mid-tempo song. Then on side two, you got March of Time, and then the beautiful, awesome single of I Want Out. That's probably their most famous song, I Want Out. It's great guitar work in it, great lyrics, great just singing, just all the way around, just a great song. And I still enjoy listening to it when it comes on just as much as I did when I first heard it. And now that's saying something, because it's been in my ears a lot the last 20, 15 years. And I can't say that about a lot of songs that I feel the same about as I did when I first heard it that long ago, till just today when I heard it again. Then obviously you have Keeper of the Seven Keys. Now on the CD track, that does end the official, the original album, Keeper of the Seven Keys, the epic track. But then on the bonus track, they did put Save Us on, and I enjoy that song as well. But I do agree with they did it right by leaving Keeper of the Seven Keys as the final track and just ended it on that epic, awesome ending of a song. And like I said, Chris, I don't think it went gold. It did in America. It did go gold in Germany, I believe, but nothing in the States. But it was very good underground, because obviously a lot of people have influence from Halloween, even from today's bands, because obviously you wouldn't have symphonic metal and such like that without bands like Halloween from the 80s and Gamma Ray and such. But for me, Chris, I always loved this album. And like I said, I know I'll probably get a little bit of a kickback just because I didn't pick part one, because that's usually the consensus, that part one is most people's choice. But for me, you can go either way, part one or part two. So I just love the title track, Keeper of the Seven Keys, and I Went Out. And that just alone pushes it ahead of a lot of what's on part one, which part one, there's not a weak track either. So, but Chris, tell me a little bit from your listening of it.
Yeah, I had never heard it before, honestly. And they kind of went under my radar. I've heard them before, like Halloween, in bits and pieces over the years, but I never focused on them or even listened to a whole album.
Right.
So that was the first time I really sat down and listened to it and concentrated. And yeah, I mean, this is what stands out. First of all, that vocalist was phenomenal. And he was young. I was reading about it. He was like 18 when they hired him, and I think he was probably about 19 or 20 when he recorded that album,
right,
or something. And they were a little bit older. I mean, it wasn't like they were super old, but they were in their mid-20s, I think. So he was a little bit younger. They tried to get him from another band, but he didn't want to leave. And they talked him into it. They said, we'll change our style up a little bit, but kind of see why. He's just where do you find something like that? I mean, he
Yeah,
was
that's a
great.
game
He's like
changer.
one of the,
His
and
vocals
I
are a
was
game changer.
thinking like his pitch is just totally perfect. Like, and this is before auto tune or anything.
Oh
So,
yeah.
he's not cheating. Oh
Right.
my gosh, what a voice. I don't even know who to compare him to. A little bit. I mean, it reminded me of Iron Maiden a bit, with
Right.
here
Yep.
here and there. But that was the music too. It was very proggy, very riffy,
Mm-hmm.
super intricate. Oh, I like that. I mean, that's Keeper of the Seven Keys was intense. It's like
Yeah.
you said, it's 13 minutes, but it's just prog heaven,
Yeah.
it's just great. um and yeah, so it was quite a treat to listen to it. I thought the middle of the album was a little weaker than, like there were a few parts that I was kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it was Mr. Stein or one of those. It just wasn't quite my style, but the other parts, the strong, everything else. I mean, the beginning and the end were super strong. Yeah, it just
Right.
really, just kind of, it blew my mind. Really, it was so good. So, and then I read about the drummer. It was that was really tragic too.
Right. Yeah.
He had like mental problems. He had committed suicide, and all that kind
It
of stuff. But
jumped out in front of a train. Like
mhm.
what was that, 93? I think it was after their, or no, it was right before the Chameleon album, I think, and they dedicated a song or that album to him. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know. I read about that too a while back, and I was like, yeah, that's a shame. Sucks.
Yeah, I mean, the band was so tight and so good. And then the guitar players seemed like they wrote a lot of it with the singer, and they
Mhm.
kind of, had a collaboration thing. I did notice that what blew my mind is apparently they're still around, or they got back together in recent years, and it's kind of the same lineup except the drummers for the most part, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
because
wow.
now they technically have three singers because uh Michael, the one of the now, okay, this is I'll try to sum this up in a quick couple minutes here. The first EP and album of theirs, just I believe self-titled, or no, I forget what the EP is called. I think it's just EP, and then the first album was Walls of Jericho, and Michael was the one that sang on that. So then after that album, they said, "Hey, we found Michael Kiske, the singer of these albums now, that is the voice of Halloween." And they're like, okay, I'll be one of the guitar guys then. And then he stuck around for part one, part two. And I think he left after part two and went and did Gamma Ray then. So, which is a big power metal band as well in their own right. And then after that, they did two more albums, and then Michael Kiske left, and then they got Andy Dearies from Pink Cream 69, if you're familiar with them at all. Uh, then that's who Andy was, the singer, then up until they all got back together a couple years ago and did an album. And now all three singers are on that album. And like, so there's basically like 7, 8 people in the band now. And that new album was amazing because you got like three vocalists coming in, like no ego, no one's ego got in the way of a great album, of a great reunion album,
Oh,
you could
yeah.
say. So,
Yeah, Michael Schenker did that in recent years. He had like four singers on his, and I went to see him live that tour too, and it was amazing to me. He had like four singers all from different eras and all getting along and having a great time. And
that's how it
back in the
should be.
day there was probably some animosity, and I know there was, with especially with Graham Bonnet, but yeah,
Right.
so that's cool when they can do that. Just kind of put the ego aside and let's just rock this out and put out a good record, good tour, whatever.
Yep. I agree. That's also that made my year when they did that album, because like this was one of my favorite top 5 bands probably ever since high school, and it was just awesome to hear that they just what that they could do all together, and I don't think there was one fan that didn't like it. I mean, obviously you're gonna have some fans that are gonna shit on it just because, but I think everyone was expectations were way past, on this, way above what everyone thought. So, so that, I mean, that's my pick here. Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. Very cool that you got to hear it for the first time. Hopefully it stays in your brain a little bit for a little while at least. So,
yeah, man.
And then, but yeah, I like your pick there too. I like revisiting some things, and Chaos AD here. I was almost gonna say Roots, but Chaos.
Oh, I got it.
Yep, there you go. So,
Cool.
Chris, anything else you want to mention about these two albums at all?
No, I mean, I think they're both very strong picks, and I'm glad you picked Halloween, and that it gave me a chance to really listen to them, and when I hadn't really listened to them before, like all the way through.
Right.
So I think that's what's good with this segment. We kind of like,
it's kind of like homework.
Like you're pushed to listen to something maybe you haven't listened to in a while. It's interesting to get their perspectives or our perspective, because of course our tastes are going to be a little different. It's
right.
like, I mean, I'm sure there's some albums that's funny too, is like, there are albums I think are great, other people think suck. There's albums that I think suck that others think are great, so it's not. And then there's those sleepers, we've been bringing up a few that kind of fly under the radar.
They're the most fun to talk about. I love
so.
talking about the sleepers, the dark horses. So
yes. Yeah.
So guys, let us know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think part 1 maybe should have been on here instead of part 2? Let me know, and tell me what you guys think about Chris's pick, Chaos AD. So very good picks though. I enjoyed listening to both of them this week. So very cool, guys. That's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. We want to thank Chris for coming back on the show, giving us another killer album. And I'm Trevor Krash Knight. Until next time, guys, we will see you guys later.